Hey guys, welcome back to Black Clover Mobile. In today's video, we're doing a guide for Summer Swimsuit Season 2, however you want to say it. Noelle, she's an absolute monster. Now we're going to go through her skills, her talents, evolutions, gears, skill pages, teams, and if there's anything else, it'll be in the timestamps. So I'll leave timestamps so you can bounce around. But before we get into it, we just wrapped up our previous giveaway on the channel. We're going to be running another giveaway in this video. All you have to do is be subscribed to the channel and leave a comment. You go into the draw and we announce the winner about a week away. You don't have to leave a like because I can't track it, but if you do, it would be much appreciated as well. And before we get into the video, I have to give Anther, a fellow content creator for the game, absolute great bloke, lent me access to his JP account to test out all these characters and stuff like that. So a massive shout out goes to him. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. If you can go show him some love and drop him a sub, it would be much appreciated. So let's get into our Noelle guide. Okay, so we're just over here on the Canadian version because it's way cleaner to look at than trying to translate JP stuff and stuff like that. So let's go through her abilities. Her basic attack, it's AoE. 55% multipliers on attack and magic attack. It's honestly pretty decent. If she has a barrier, she gets 30% increased damage dealt. If she has her blessing of water, she gets 40% increased damage dealt. Really nice for a basic attack that is AoE. Pretty solid damage out of that one. Then we jump into her skill 2. Now, this is the thing that makes her absolutely cracked. She's going to grant the designated ally. So only one ally gets this, which is Blessing of Water, equal to 120% of her magic attack for 2 turns. Then all allies gain a barrier equal to 100% of her magic attack for 2 turns. And then all allies also get 10% favored damage increase for 2 turns. Now, just to note, her skill ups on this one are quite nice, increasing those barriers and the Blessing of Water barrier, which is really, really solid to help survival and stuff like that. So that is this one. One thing to note with this is that Blessing of Water only goes on one ally, and whoever has the Blessing of Water is the one that revenges. A lot of things you'll see is Noelle revenging because a lot of the time you're putting that barrier on her because she's going to be your main damage dealer. She's got an AoE with a decent multiplier and a good effect for her basic attack. So when she does revenge, she's fantastic. But just know that it is like if you have a Mars in your team and you put that, if you target him with the Blessing, then it'll be when he gets attacked and the blessing doesn't get removed, then he revenges. Because the blessing specifically states that creates a barrier providing immunity to a set amount of damage and triggers a counterattack upon taking damage. If enemy fails to remove the barrier when their initial attack, a counterattack will be executed. So it's on whoever has this buff is the one that does revenge. Just wanted to make that clear. So don't just go be willy-nilly going and throwing it around. You really want to target who you want to target, which most of the time is going to be Noelle because she has a really good counterattack with that basic attack, which is quite awesome. Then we go on to her ultimate. This is a really nice ultimate with a 90% multiplier, which is really good, on top of the fact that she's going to cast herself a magic attack plus 55% before she does it. And then the fantastic thing is, because those ones where it says attacks after granting, you only get that boost for that attack. But then on top of this, after it, she grants herself magic attack up level for 2 turns, which is fantastic. It means that her next turn, you know, if she get like the next, she basically can maintain this pretty decently, especially if you've got positive attribute against enemies. But it's a really solid buff and it's going to help her shield if you shield after it as well, which is fantastic because she's getting more magic attack. So that is a really, really nice ultimate. As for her combo attack, you're not really using this. You're not really going to use it with her because it just doesn't have as much damage as her ultimate unless you're trying to get clutch support from the unit she's paired up with. I feel like this is a more niche situation thing, or if you have a unit paired with her that you don't really want to ultimate with, those are going to be the 2 kind of situations in which you might use this. But in general, you're probably not going to look to use this too much. But it is another AoE attack. So her entire kit is AoEs besides her skill 2, which is a supportive ability. Now for her LR Awakening passive, she gets magic attack plus 12. Honestly, it's fantastic because she wants magic attack. Helps damage, helps shields. Happy days. Then for her at level at 2 stars at E2 evolution 2, she's at the start of a wave, she's going to get 10% of her max HP as a barrier for 2 turns. Now this one's okay. It's like I like it. I'm going to go for this myself. E5 is where the real magic happens, but this one's still for a bit of mitigation because she is going to be a damage dealer that you're stacking a lot of magic attack, can be helpful to help her survive against certain matchups in arena. And I've got my own thing where I'm going to try different gear builds and stuff like that, but that is a bit niche. But this one in general is not as crazy as when we look at her 5-star passive, because with her 5-star passive, which I can't actually pop up here, but it's going to give her a 15% barrier, but it's going to be the one of her Blessing of Water. So that it will make her proc her revenge if enemies don't destroy it. So starting with that is huge. So her number 5 is huge. Her number 2 is nice for survival, but her her 2 gives her a bit of extra survival. The 5 gives her extra survival and potential damage as well. But just keep in mind, for those players summoning at global when she comes out, we do have Julius coming out, who really does want to go to 5-star as well, because he gets the extra speed on top of that, which really makes his kit work. So just weigh it up. Eventually I'm probably going to try and get them both to 5, but that is me personally. So that is that one, and that pretty much covers Noelle's kit. All right, now we look into talents. So when we look into her offensive talents, and once again, for most people at global, I recommend just doing 2 talents on each one, getting those effects, and then worrying about the internal ones, the carved stones, a bit later on. I wouldn't stress about those straight away. But what we're looking at is going to be magic attack and the extra crit rate at the start of a wave. Now, even for PvP, this ain't too great, but when you consider if you want to get that magic attack, your other option is attacks after granting 10% increased damage buff when attacking bosses. Doesn't help you for PvP either. Now, another option you could play around with is damage dealt and crit damage, but I think that's more of a niche thing later on depending on builds, and I think this is the generic build that I would recommend to most players, being the magic attack and the crit rate. As we look into defensive talents, the defense one is what I would go for. We haven't got the exact damage calculation formula, but in general, 20% defense is going to give more effective HP than 5% max HP from my understanding of the game and the way it works. Then you have 2 options, and honestly, both of these options are viable. This one gives you 4% defense and crit resistance at each wave, so this one's going to be great for PvE, but for PvP, this one is an option. You could use either or. Grants debuff immunity for 1 turn if HP is equal to or lower than 35%. This pretty much for every character can come in clutch in certain situations in PvP, but this is just guaranteed 4% defense and 2% crit res. So it's up to you on which ones you want to do, but this is the definite PvE build for me. But like I said, on PvP, you can go for the defense and the debuff immunity as well if you want to. As we move into the supportive ones, basically you've got 2 options. You can go for, I love this one. 20% chance to grant a reduced skill 2 cooldown by 1 turn buff at the start of a turn. I really like this one, considering her skill 2 is that massive shield. I think this is really invaluable, especially considering she has a 3-turn cooldown on it. This can be super, super clutch. Now, if you're going to go for this one, you can either go for damage resistance, or you can go for some extra damage over here with the accuracy and penetration. It's completely up to you. I think for most people, the damage resistance is going to be a better option in general, because she does need to survive as well, considering she's going to be built fairly glass cannon-ish normally. The damage res can always help her because she needs that shield to survive, to last, for her to proc her counter. So that is a thing. Now, there is another one here which you can go for, which is grants the plus SP plus 1 buff after having less than 2 SP. So essentially what this means is after you use your ultimate, you get a bonus SP at the start of the next turn. That one for her, I definitely don't think is anywhere near as good as this skill cooldown reduction. So like I said, I would normally go for this one and this one for most people generally, but if you want to just get extra damage potential, then you can go for the accuracy and penetration one, and that pretty much covers it. As for your stones here, if you can get the attack and magic attack on this one, fantastic. I know for a lot of players, you're not going to worry about it yet, but this one, defense is perfectly fine. You can go damage res. It's really whatever you have the best ones of. And then obviously over here on this one, if you have it, then you go for the extra speed. But once again, for most players at global, just unlock the 2 that you want, the ideal ones, and then leave the rest for later. It's not really worth the investment at this stage for most people, unless you're a mega whale. Now we're going to check out gear, and I'm going to steal most of my gear off my Lotus because, like most players at global, pretty low on the gear on how much you have. Now, main stats, basically, you're going to look for 4 big ones and 3 small ones. You want to try and create 3 sets if you can. Now, on global, we're pretty limited on what we have based on the drops that you've had so far. I'll talk about optimal sets in a sec, but ideally, you want to be stacking as much magic attack as you want, as you can really. But having said that, I will be experimenting with putting a defense slot in there as well, just to test out survival versus damage depending on the situation. I'm just going to play around with it in PvP and see what works, because it's going to be different in different situations. Maybe you want that extra bit of defense so you can survive a hit, get your revenge off, stuff like that. It is a bit more nuanced, but in general, for most players, what I would recommend is just stacking up the magic attack and going with that. Now, substats that you're going to be looking for are going to be magic attack percent. They're both very very beneficial. Increases her damage, increases her shielding capabilities, both fantastic. Crit rate, crit damage, both good. And those are like the main stats you're looking for. Then you can look for some tanky stats as well to help her survive. Honestly, she pretty much takes any substats she can get. The only thing you don't really want to look for is attack percent. Flat attack isn't horrible because it does give you some damage throughput, but in general, because she has low base attack, then her attack percent isn't going to give her as much. But in general, like literally she'll take anything, ideally magic attack percent, crit rate, crit damage. But let's face it, we're at global. We haven't got too much gear. You're taking whatever you can get. As for the sets, let's go through sets. I feel like this is the easiest way to represent what sets you want to look for. Now, don't take this set. This set bad. This set gives her crit damage on before using her, like when you use your skill 2. That is not good because her skill 2 is the only thing that doesn't deal damage. So you do not want that one. Besides that, you can go for any offensive sets. For most players at global, we farm the red dungeon with our blue team. So you're looking at this, and this as probably being your 3 ideal sets that you can go for. Now, once again, as long as you got the stats, even going for one of these, being the blue defense star set, is going to be nice because that's going to help her survivability. Like I said, I might even experiment with putting a defense slot on her. So that is going to help her survive with her shields. So you can look to doing some defense as well. As for maybe you've crafted some sets, you can definitely look to the crit set. If they're above, 70% HP, you get increased crit rate. That's not too bad. That's going to help her deal more damage, like get reliable crits. We also have the penetration set. That's going to help out. Now, as I mentioned before, we don't know. I've asked to try and get it, but I can't get the damage formula. So I can't tell you exactly how much better or worse penetration is compared to attack and stuff like that because I just don't know, unfortunately. But that one could be decent. Other things you may have crafted, accuracy, probably the bottom of the barrel for these ones, but hey, you can use it if you have to. Now, the other 2 sets that people will be getting is this one and this one. I don't recommend those 2 as optimal, but if you can make that set and you've got good stats on them, you can go ahead. And then the other ones that we look to, which is much further in the future, we're going to be probably looking at these 3 sets for the crit rate, crit damage, and extra penetration. When we look at this one compared to this one on penetration, this one gives 5 penetration at base. This one gives 7, I believe it is. So it's not too much of a crazy difference in general, but those are the sets. But recapping, these ones come later. These 2 you may have crafted, and that one as well. And then this is what I'd ideally be looking for most people from global is the normal attack set, the attack star set, and the speed star set to get you ahead of people on speed ties and stuff like that. And then these 2 are just going to increase her magic attack, giving her more damage and also giving her better shielding. So that is what I would look for on sets. Now we're going to talk skill pages. I'm over here on Pride Wing because it was just easier to tab through these things than go through them in the game. Her signature one, it's okay. Upon being attacked, has a 20 to 35% chance based on whatever level you have and how many stars to grant a barrier equal to 5 to 10% of damage taken for 2 turns. Honestly, I'm not a massive fan of this. I don't think it's crazy by any means, but it's still okay. Now, if you happen to get it, this is not something I would target. If you get it, you can use it because it will also give her the skill upgrade, which does give her a heal tied into her skill when she uses it on allies with the barrier. Like, it's okay, but it's honestly nothing crazy for a signature skill page. We've got some other options as well, though. Everyone got a free copy of this one. You get another free copy of it in World 5 as well, which gives you another upgrade into it, but it's going to give you crit rate at the start of ally's turn. This is going to help her start obviously getting her crit rate up and help her damage out if you want to use that one. This one is a generally splashable one. We all got a free copy of this at the start of the game through the tutorial. Plus 10 to 20% increase all attack to yourself. All attack, that is going to increase your attack and magic attack. So magic attack, obviously, we love that. Helps damage, helps our shielding as well, which is fantastic. So those are the main SSRs that I think most people will have access to. Then if we look into SRs, we have this one here from Solids one, which gives her an extra 7 to 15% crit rate, which is pretty decent, getting 15 if you have this thing maxed out over time. But we also have this one here, which is just going to give you, and because this one's one of those generic ones, this one's much easier to max than say Solids one. You just get a 12% increase damage dealt buff, which is pretty solid as well. And there is the other one, which I will probably talk about in a future video if I can get it to work, which is the stun immunity one for one turn at the start of battle. I feel like maybe you'll be able to use that on her in certain situations to counter stun, maybe against Julius, but it's going to depend on builds and stuff like that and teams, so I'm not going to go too deep into that one. But then we also have this one if you're absolutely desperate. Like I said, everyone's got this and this, so you should be pretty well set up, but I just thought this one was worth noting a little bit. Applies increase 10% magic attack to yourself. Like I said, this one at max is basically just kind of like a version of this one at base, but I believe this one would give more power to you at max than this one would, even though they would basically both be 10% attack and 10% magic attack. Because the way power is calculated, the R at max dupes would probably give you more power than this one at 0 dupes. Just something to consider if you're trying to get your power up at the same time, but that is what we are looking at for the skill pages. So now I wanted to touch on teams and go through what I'm going to be doing now. Mainly I'm looking at PvP here. She's going to slot well into pretty much just any PvE team. She'll probably be able to work in your red dungeon farming team, depending on your power levels and stuff like that. Obviously, you put her in a red team to farm green stuff. I'm not going to go too deep into PvE teams because I feel like PvE is pretty basic at this point. You build the color that beats the color is essentially the way it works. But PvP, I will do more stuff on this in the future when I see where the meta is at. I'm going to try and climb into top 10 if I can. I think I'm sitting at around between 60 and 100 at the moment, but these are the kind of teams I'm looking to use myself personally. So this is more of a toxic, stallish team that aims to just keep her alive and allow her to, no matter what, be able to kill the enemies, because if we have her in the team, they're going to have to bring blue damage to get the kill on her, and then we've got the extra shielding from Radies to help her survive. If she dies, we've got Mimosa to revive. We've got Mars stopping debuffs at the start of battle, which is going to help her survive, and then Mars works really well with her because Radies is going to want to ult for the shield. Mimosa is going to want to save her ult for the revive. Mars actually loves his combo attack even when it's not with Lotus because he has the stun potential, and that's going to give us additional damage capabilities out of our Noelle. So I think that is going to be a really strong play. That is like the most toxic team I think I'm going to be able to build, and I'm hoping this can get me some defense wins. The other team I'm looking at is a little bit different, but dropping Mimosa, and we're running the annoying, slowing, stalling Lotus and Mars type thing in PvP. The idea behind this team is that hopefully Radies can keep us alive, and then we can just manipulate speed and gauge manipulate enemies long enough that Noelle can get her stuff done and survive. Keeping in mind, Radies is not the only one keeping us alive. We've got Noelle shields as well. But this one, for this type of build, I would probably put Radies on a full speed set, which would sacrifice his shield's strength, but just so I can try and outspeed certain things and get his shield on faster. But that is a bit more niche. But then the other thing is, I don't have enough dupes into these two, which is Finral and Veltos. If you have more dupes into these guys, they have more speed. And then you can look at doing speed clearing teams. With these guys, maybe you include something like Charlotte. Now, you don't need to use both of these guys. In some situations, you will need to use both. Finral for the speed, Veltos for the gauge boost, or you can try and do Finral's skill 2 for the boost if you have his signature's page, but it's only a 60% chance, and that's really not reliable on offense. Maybe you play it as a troll defense, but you can go for the more speed type clear teams in Arena as well. For me personally, I'm not there yet, so that is not something I am looking to do because I just can't outspeed. And just keep in mind as well, for free-to-play players, I always like to remind people of this before they try and speed cleave against enemy defenses that have the Finrals and Veltos. If they don't have Finral or Veltos, then you're a bit safer to go ahead and do this. But with talents, spenders can buy a +3 speed slot for this, whereas free-to-play players can only farm a +1 speed. So often, if you're climbing ranks and you're getting higher in the ranks, you will be losing those speed ties. So I always put caution towards those speed teams when you're looking at that. But like I said, these are the two main teams I'm going to look at. These two here, I think they're absolutely toxic and hopefully can get me some defense win or at least stop people from attacking me. And also, I think these are going to be pretty solid on offense as well, because like I said, something like this, even if she gets nuked, she comes back, away she goes. She's pretty self-sufficient. She can deal a lot of damage. We got stuns with Mars. We've got survivability with these two. We got plenty of damage mitigation, and it's pretty fantastic. So that's what I'm looking at doing for the meta. We will update this in the Julius guide, which will talk about teams using her and Julie's once we get there, but that is another week away or so. But that is a look at teams for Noelle. And I think that pretty much covers everything. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to be subscribed and leave a comment to go into the draw for the giveaway. And also, once again, go show Antho some love. Do let me on his JP account to test all these things out. I really do appreciate it. So see if we can get him to 10k subs by New Year's. That would be absolutely fantastic. But thanks for watching, guys. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.